Well, hello there. I got a question for you guys. Is confrontation actually a loving thing? Or is it something that we probably should avoid altogether? I know we've talked about this in some previous thought raids, but this has been my week and I want to talk about it. So let's jump right in. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, and this is Tim, and today is Get Naked Monday, where we metaphorically get naked and talk about things that are going on in our personal lives and how we are handling them, and a little bit of coffee for your thoughts right now. So, let me tell you, this week has been nothing but confrontation city for me. Like, ooh, careful, don't hurt yourself. Coffee is hot. This week has been nothing but confrontation city for me. And I can't seem to get away from it, honestly. Like, even in the end of 2 weeks ago, like we're talking Saturday, there was already a beginning of all of this stuff. And I have been going through a whole bunch of studies, or specifically people who have done a lot of research talking about it on YouTube. It's something I like to do a lot. And I've been going through people like Vadi Bachman. I've been going through things from Prager University. I've been going through things from this book called Live Not by Lies. Just different type. Jordan Peterson. I've been going through a lot of different people talking about things in this culture that's going wrong, and it's not pretty, and it's not politically acceptable either. And even beside the research that I've been going through, it just seems that I keep getting involved, honestly, in confrontational moments, either being the source of the confrontation or mediating. There you go. That's the word. Mediating different confrontations. And it begs to ask the question, honestly, is confrontation even a good thing or a loving thing for that matter? Because it's not pleasant. Don't let anyone fool you. Like, I don't think there's ever a point, regardless if you are a type A personality person or B and you go with the flow. I don't think there's any a time where you're going to be like, yes, I absolutely love confronting it. Like, you can definitely build up like a fortitude to do it, but it's not fun because you could get hurt. The other person could get hurt. You could be wrong. And that's a big threat, and it's very hard to be wrong. Just saying, like, it could, when you're wrong on one thing, I know the pervasive thought, at least in my head, is, how many other places am I wrong? How much of a buffoon have I been this whole time? But at the same time, like, again, is it possible to be able to confront someone in love? Is it even a loving thing to be confrontational? Before I go into my thoughts on that, Tim, what are specifically your thoughts on the matter of loving and being confrontational and all that jazz?
I'm not quite sure. We talk about this a lot, and frequently you've heard me say that you cannot have a relationship. And I guess you can have a relationship without confrontation, but you can't have a deep, sincere, honest relationship without confrontation. And as you were talking, I was just sitting here writing some notes. I was like, well, what's the point of confrontation in the first place? And I was just thinking about it because I think about all the good reasons, but there's bad reasons too. So maybe we should go through that. Like, I was just sitting here thinking, what's the point of confrontation if it is healthy? If we are on the side of confrontation is loving, what's the good fruit of it? And, being in friendships, being in a romantic relationship because I'm married, trying to engage with new people, showing them that they have value even though I don't know them. Like, if they cross me, if they cross me, I think it's really important for me when I engage in confrontation to express how I feel about something and separate somebody's value from the circumstance. And I think I also engage in confrontation for reconciliation, because if there's a divide between me and another person, that thing needs to be removed in order for us to have a healthy relationship. And the only way to do that is to address it. I think not confronting things is detrimental to a relationship, because either you don't believe that you're worth the confrontation, you don't believe that the other person's worth it, you don't believe that either of you is going to receive it well, and you might also think to yourself, it's not worth it to go through the confrontation, because confrontation can suck, man. And, everything we do, I mean, think about it. You go to the grocery store, you go to the mall, you're always weighing, is it worth the cost? You see a shirt for $50. No, that's not worth the cost. But then you see a wool Abercrombie and Fitch jacket, like the thing that's going to last you 100 years, and it's $200, and it's like, that actually might be worth it, And we do the same thing in relationships when it comes to confrontation, whether it's you've slighted me in this way, or we have a difference of opinion, or your worldview is different from my worldview. How can we come to consensus so that we either understand each other, or one of us or both of us can change our behaviors?
Yeah. It's I definitely agree with you that when it comes to like in being in relationships or of any sort, whether it be romantic or not romantic, you're going to have to be confrontational at times. Because there's going to be inevitably something that they're going to do that is going to hit you the wrong way, or may be born out of their own particular self-interest and not really mutual for the friendship, the relationship, whatever degree it is. And it's just interesting. Like, I honestly feel like it would be unloving to notice something that's been wrong and to not say something about it and to not confront the person about it, especially the more severe the thing is. We were talking about, either we were or someone was talking to me about, I don't remember, so maybe if I begin to talk about this, you can let me know. But I remember having some conversation about two specific ditches. You have one ditch where the person is like super passionate about something and they're hurting people. And then you have the other ditch where they're just apathetic and they are absolutely not talking about things. They're just keeping it all to themselves and they become seemingly lazy. And you or someone mentioned that would perhaps be worse than the other end of, at least this person has a passion. But I don't remember if it was you that I was having that conversation with or someone else. Maybe it wasn't in thoughtraid that we had that conversation. I just remember having it, but I can't remember the context. Either way, I think it can be problematic and not loving if there is an issue going on and nothing is said about it. Like, it doesn't happen. Because that would that at least would convey to me and the other person that, well, if I'm the one being apathetic, it doesn't convey much to me. It conveys more to the other person, that the relationship doesn't matter.
Well, I'm just thinking about what it would be like if I was in a relationship with somebody and I knew that I'd wronged them in some way. You could tell, right? I had an employee that I had wronged, and for 2 weeks he didn't say anything. And I could tell, it's like something's bubbling under the surface. And my question to myself was, okay, well, why is he upset? And honestly, I had no clue why he was upset until I asked him. Then I discovered it was something that I had done. Then I was thinking to myself, okay, well, why didn't he engage me with this? What was the issue? What prevented him from coming to me and saying, I have an issue with something that you said, right? And it could be any number of things. It could have been, he was trying to keep his cool because the way he felt about what I did was out of disproportionate to the thing that I did itself. It could have been he was so livid with me because it was so I guess, dumb. Like what are you doing saying that? I mean, it could have been any number of things, but I think when you identify that there's something wrong in a relationship or one party is hurt by the other, there's a level of mistrust there. And trust, you can just give somebody trust by default because of their position. For instance, if I engage with a police officer, and this is up for a lot of people might contest this commentary right now, but if I engage with a police officer, the understanding of that position is that they are there to serve and protect. And so if I'm in trouble, I'm going to go to a police officer, right? Now, if I just found some random dude on the street, I don't know what expectations I have of that person, right? I don't know if they're going to help me. I don't know if they're going to hurt me, but I know that the position of a police officer is to help me. Now, if you translate that into relationships, right? It's like trust has to be built, and you gain trust by testing confrontation after confrontation after confrontation, increasing in intimacy. And we talk about this all the time, the difference between, or rather the correlation between intimacy and commitment. And oftentimes I see people get to a place in their relationship where they're committed up to a point, but when it comes to confrontation for something really deep, it's like, I don't want to commit that much to this person. And the relationship just stops, And then there have been other times where somebody has committed so much and they require so much of the other person. And the only reason they engage in confrontation is because they're trying to get something from them. I'm sorry, they didn't commit. They want more intimacy than their commitment. And so their whole purpose for the confrontation is to get something from that person.
There was something that you specifically mentioned where, the level of intimacy stopped. And when the confrontation stopped, like it plateaued. There was just something about that just kind of caught. I don't know if that's exactly what you said, but it made me stop and think. Like, I've recognized from a very recent conversation that when something is no longer on the table to be confronted, if it is truly wrong, that there is an immediate halt in the relationship that happens when you cannot confront a person because they're not open to it. Because there's just, realize it or not, you could probably rationalize in your head that, well, they've had this day or this bad day or whatever, or, that's just the way they've always been or whatever. But like, honestly, when you're trying to confront someone and they just shut it down, they're not going to talk about it. There's no way I cannot see a way that the relationship can continue beyond that point. And maybe it can continue, but not in an upward graph, line. It's just kind of, and that's kind of where it stops. And like talking about loving someone, like imagine how difficult it can be to love someone if you cannot continue forward with them in particular areas. Go ahead.
And that's the thing, in a lot of relationships that I get the pleasure of coaching, or I get the honor of coaching, I sometimes see it where one party tries and the other party doesn't. And it's the whole value proposition. It's like saying a couple going in and saying, I'm willing to spend $20,000 on a car. And the other person's like, I'm only willing to spend $10,000. Not that one is right, because the person that wants to spend $10,000 might think, oh, I just want to save some money. The person that wants to spend $20,000 might just be thinking, well, I want to invest a little bit more so we'll have more quality, more comfort, and it'll last longer, and it's just a difference of opinion. But when they're not willing to bring those differences to the table and actually engage in them and find some middle ground, the commitment stops, the relationship stops. You cannot have a relationship without confrontation. You cannot have it, at least to a degree that's going to keep growing, Now, it's different if somebody keeps saying, okay, well, I want to engage in this confrontation because I want to feel superior. I want to address something in you, not for the sake of our relationship, but for the sake of how I feel, right? And you see that when people engage in conflict and confrontation, but there's two ingredients that are required for that. There is providing input and receiving input. And when you engage in confrontation and you only do one of those, where you only provide input and you're not willing to receive input, that also stops a relationship.
Yeah, that's another ditch to fall into, where it's just one-sided confrontation of someone trying to
And that's the church in many forms and fashions these days.
To be properly confrontational, you must be willing and open to the other person confronting you, because oftentimes, you're going to be wrong. Because there's going to be things you'll say in passion that is not fully indicative of how you feel, worries you'll bring to the table that is not actually reality. You honestly don't fully know why someone does as they do, and you must rely on what they tell you and or what God is showing you about the situation, because sometimes people do lie. But like, if you're in a good relationship, it's fruitless to continue to question every little thing the person says about themselves.
Well, that's a good point that you bring up about lying, because if somebody is in a relationship and they're lying, that's also not confrontation. That's avoiding confrontation intentionally. That's basically saying there's an opportunity for confrontation and I'm going to do everything I can to avoid it because you are not worth the truth. And that's really tough. I know I've lied in the past. We've all lied to some form in some form or fashion. Some of us tell white lies. Some of us tell blatant, this is not true lies. And, it's just one of those things where you have to understand that if you're going to be in a healthy relationship with somebody, they're also going to respect you at your worst. They're going to respect you. And even if they don't on the front end, on the other end, behind all their feelings, behind all their shortcomings, behind all that after the fact, you can trust that in them, they're going to get to a point where they see you for who you are, not what you do.
That's something that really needs to be addressed when it comes to confrontation and love and relationships in general. This is maybe a slight tangent, but nothing can be securely maintained on a mound of lies. Lying is like sand, and you're trying to build a relationship on sand. It's unstable. There's so many fragments, and it's not dense enough to be able to build anything of value on it. Especially when the storms of life generally come, when you lose a friend or your health has gone south for the winter. When that happens, there's a couple things to be looked at here. Like, I've seen people who build their life around lies. I've seen politicians, I've seen friends, I've seen businesses build on that. And you always eventually lose when you lie. When it comes to relationships, you're literally building everything on a facade. And that facade and that relationship may not even be valid once the facade comes down. And there's a big risk you take. Like, it has to be completely built on your strength to continue to convince the person that what you say is true, which causes unnecessary stress on yourself. It makes it a lot harder to be truthful because you're afraid of your house of cards coming down. And it's also damages the other person because they've wasted time, and you have to know that they've wasted time believing that you're one way when you're not. And that's not fair for them, nor is it fair for you. Or when we look into politicians and they're trying to win political power and they tell you something and it's a complete and total lie, then that causes a lot of strife throughout the country and you have to generate said strife in order to maintain said power on those predicated lies you're trying to spin in order to get into office. And again, that's all only possible for as long as you're able to convince someone of that, and all the strength relies on you, which is a waste of energy for a country to be wasting their time lying about specific things. you could be spending that time building up the country and making sure that it is prepared for threats and taking care of the hurting and the lost in the country, rather than just trying to make them believe that there's all these other things. Or we're talking like a company lying about what finances they actually have, and then making decisions upon what they believe they'll have financially rather than what they actually do have and what is truly coming in. And then before you know it, you've spun the company into debt, or in a more worse situation, you have been doing unethical things and people are buying into it. And the minute that the truth truly comes out, and it eventually will, it's gone. You've wasted your time entirely on what you build. That money is no real fortress for you. I have seen through my studies of history how no matter how strong of a lie system you can build up as a company, eventually the tables can quickly turn and every dollar you ever had can be taken directly out from underneath you, no matter how long you had it and where you're storing it. And that's usually when things like communism arises and socialism and things of that nature, because there's a lot of misconduct of, how you're running your business, and people think you're the issue, and really you are in some cases. But that's another story. But confrontation, I think, can be done in love. And I feel like there needs to be a distinction of what that looks like, how to confront in love, because we can easily confront in fear and confront in anger and confront in pride. But how do you possibly confront in love so that it is done well and received well and there's healing, even though there is going to also be brokenness and pain in the process of the hurting or the confronting, excuse me.
So, guys, I want to plug for a company that I support. If you go to Google and you type in The Skin Deep, this is a company, I guess it's a girl, her name is Topaz, created this card game called The And they have different versions of it. They have the friends version, they have the couples version, they have the healing version, which I really want to get. And it's pretty inexpensive. It's like $25 for a deck. And the way you play it is you engage with somebody that you're in relationship with in one of those forms or fashion, friend, couple, somebody that's hurt you, etc. And you have to be touching in some way. You could sit down with like your knees touching, holding hands. You could go foot to foot, just whatever, some kind of physical contact. And then you pick 3 cards. And they're all just questions. That's it. There's no points. It's just questions. You pick 3 at random. You look each other in the eye, and then you ask the question. And the way it works is one person asks the question, the other person, without being interrupted, responds. And then once they're finished, the person receiving that gets to respond with how they feel about it without arguing. And it's just talking about how you feel in response. And it's a really good tool. If you cannot or do not want to respond, you have to pay the price of looking the other person in the eye for 10 seconds without breaking. And it's all about building relationship, because you can have conflict and say, not right now, but that has to be communicated. It is healthy to say, I'm not ready for this right now, because if you know that you're triggered, and if you know that all that's going to come out is flesh instead of redeemed, it's okay to say, hey, I'm not in a healthy place right now to talk about this, but we can continue this at this time.
Yeah, I can definitely say that it is perfectly acceptable to shelve the confrontation to a later time when you are in a better mindset to do so. In fact, that's probably a good first step to loving someone, is allowing them to set the time for when the confrontation happens, so that way you're communicating that this confrontation does need to happen, but I want to make sure that you are of the best mind when we do it, so that way we don't have unnecessary frustrations. But it needs to happen. So you want to make sure that when the time comes, that we're not just letting it pass. Like, okay, we're gonna do some confrontation on Cinco de Mayo, which is today, I think, actually.
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Excuse me. Lo siento.
Oh, no, it's Wednesday. Sorry. Today's the 3rd.
Ay, caramba. And then Cinco de Mayo comes around and nothing happens. you gotta have to have that confrontation, because I have a couple friends in my life that is the example of this. Every time the confrontation doesn't happen, it doesn't disappear. The anger, the fear, the whatever doesn't disappear. Instead, it may temporarily no longer bother you, but more likely than not, especially if it's truly a big deal, it compounds, it compresses, and your anger can turn into a hate diamond. And then you've got a bigger issue than you had before. And the only solution to prevent that from happening, or to break down that diamond, is to confront and to finally get it done with. And it needs to be stated that you probably still won't confront in the right way. You still probably will get angry or anxious or whatever. But that's okay, because if the other person is healthy, it is better to go through a little bit of pain together than it is to pretend like the pain's not there or the problem is not there. And then what you run the risk of by not expressing it, which is worse, is how you will end up slipping into apathy or numbness or jadedness, which is a bigger issue. And that's where Cold Wars come from, where things are just refusing to be addressed.
And guys, something I want to say also is that you are not perfect, and neither is the person that you're going to have confrontations with. And it is perfectly acceptable to seek help. There are so many people out there that think, especially guys, because if you're a man in a relationship and you think, okay, well, I need to lead, I need to, be strong, I can't cry. I saw this company that was advertised on Facebook, because you know how those little ads pop up, and it was just a blue sweatshirt, and I really want this, and it says something like boys cry too, and it's a simple thing, but you're going to be weak, and you're going to have times where it's going to feel virtually impossible to engage in confrontation, but you have to ask yourself, is this relationship worth it to me? And if it is, seek help. Find somebody that can act as a mediator, because, man, you might not think it, but there are so many people in your life that want to help. But it's really important to find somebody that's not biased, somebody that's not going to take sides, somebody that doesn't have a predisposition towards one party or one mode of thought in particular. And you can tell that they are just completely focused on your value, their value, and the value of your relationship. That's essentially what we do. I guess more so me, because I do premarital stuff. I like acting as a mediator. And man, whenever couples that I'm talking to have a disagreement, like that game I was telling you guys about, the Skin Deep game, I loaned that to a couple clients recently, and in talking with the lady, she said, yeah, we've been doing it. We had an argument about it the other night. And I was like, that's awesome. That is awesome. You think that arguments are bad. Like, I was talking to somebody today, and I was asking them how their relationship is going. And they said, well, we've been together for almost a year, and we've only had one argument. I was like, well, that's either really awesome, or you're not communicating properly, because no two people are that similar. And it's just one of those things where you have to be intentional about talking about how you feel, what you think, and sometimes having a third party come in, whether it's a person or a game like that, where you just draw a card and it's like, oh, I've never actually asked this question before. For instance, when was the last time I made you feel special? And just thinking about that, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's confrontation right there. You haven't made me feel special, Brandon.
I was about ready to unmute and answer that question, then you continued forward. Last time that you made me feel special. Oh, now I'm having to sit and think. It's not long ago. I'm just trying to specifically remember the moment. I think it was the moment where, that's one that I can specifically, that's coming to mind. There's stuff that happened since that point. But I told you that I have begun to look at you as an older brother, which is a big thing because I'm an only child, so no one would be older than me in my family, you know. So I never really think about that honestly, but I've begun to think about it, and your immediate response was "aw," and that made me feel special. It's the small things. It's the little things.
Yeah, but getting back on the topic of mediation and finding somebody that can be unbiased, yeah, don't feel bad about that. Be very intentional with that. And there's a lot of shade that's thrown on people who have therapists and counselors, and I don't really understand why, because we're all messed up. We've all fallen short. We're all broken. We're all sinful.
Even counselors need counselors.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. And when you look at it from a religious perspective too, Christians need Christians. Christians need Jesus. You know, there's always an intermediary. When I'm trying to speak to God, I mean, that's why the whole thing of speaking in tongues, that's where the Spirit intercesses for us. You know, there's all sorts of mediators. I mean, it's a natural, commonplace thing. So I just want to encourage you that if you don't feel capable of confrontation, all you have to do is open the door. And then whether you're the person saying, hey, Brandon, I don't like your face, let's talk about this. Or if you were saying, hey, person over here, person B, I don't know, my wife, Ariane, I feel like I can't talk to Brandon about this. Could you engage with us in a conversation and help us talk about it? Like, help us navigate this without getting too feisty.
Another thing that can be done when you're needing to be confrontational is to write down, unedited, don't hinder yourself, exactly the things that bother you about the person, and have that with you. And if you can confront them, bring that with you. So that way, if you feel tempted to go back on what you were feeling, you have that little sheet of paper or multiple sheets of paper, depending on how much it is, to remind you of what you felt. And so you can cover it point by point. And of course, if it is a healthy relationship, it will be uncomfortable, but they will walk through it with you. But if it's unhealthy, that might be a situation where all you can do is write it down so that way you can get it out of your system, because there is sometimes that you want to be confrontational, but the person is toxic and they're not going to listen. And that will be its own separate thought raid at some point.
Yeah, and something to think about with that too, guys, is you need to shut up and listen. You need to learn how to listen. We all need to learn how to listen, because if somebody is giving you constructive, and it's not going to feel constructive, but when somebody's giving you feedback, your question should be, why do they think this, right? And it could be true. It could not be true. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times, whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Being right or wrong has no place in a relationship. Listening and making the other person feel valued and heard within their circumstances is what relationship is all about. That's what Jesus does. Jesus cares more about my heart than my circumstances. The circumstances do matter. The sin does matter, but Jesus is not sin focused. He's life focused. God is not sin focused. He's life focused. It said, John 3:16, for God so loved the world first. He saw my value first. He gave his son, right? And so in relationship, I love you so much that I'm going to engage in this with you. Your value, how you feel, matters first, that we are going to talk. Not we're going to talk about this and then your value matters first. It matters first. And there are people who are toxic. There are people who are abusive. That's going to be a thing. If you are single and you've been going from person to person to person to person to person to person to person, and it seems like you're always doing something wrong, you're probably picking people that prey on your ability to say, I'm wrong. But if you're also going from person to person to person to person, and it seems like something's wrong with everybody else, maybe you need to listen more. You know, you have healthy relationships have as close to possible to equal 50-50 parts feedback. You need to change. I need to change. You need to change. I need to change. You need to change. I need to change. There is a problem if it's always you that needs to change. If that's the case, you're probably unequally yoked or in different seasons of life.
And we kind of touched on this early on in the beginning of the stream, but if there is a part in the confrontation that is untouchable, we can't talk about this. That's not healthy. Like if there's this, now it's contextual. If there is a situation where you feel tempted to bring up someone's faults all the time without context and there's no reason to do so, that's a problem and should not be touched. If someone has genuinely made a change, but if there is a area that cannot be touched and the person refuses to talk about it, that's not loving. That's controlling.
Well, I agree and I disagree. I agree that if the conversation, which is intimacy, right? If the intimacy is equal to the commitment level of your relationship, for instance, if I just met somebody, I'm not going to tell them how much I have in my bank account because that's off limits. That's not necessary.
That's what I was thinking. I was not suggesting that this is applicable to every single person you ever encounter. I'm thinking more so in the situations where it is a close relationship or one that you are wanting to pursue and it's the other person does too.
Yeah. And, guys, that is also a good way, I guess, a barometer, a thermometer.
Hold on one second. I'm not sure if I missed the entire thing because I looked down and it was still blinking when I said that, but let me just repeat myself just in case it was missed. I'm not specifically talking about relationships that you have no idea who the person is and like expecting them to like you have to talk about these specific things. No, like it needs to be in the context of relationship where both people are equally invested into it, or you're trying to like move forward and you can tell that they're interested in moving forward with the relationship as well, whatever that relationship may be, being friendship or romantic or something else. So I just want to make sure that is clear, not some person you met off the street or an acquaintance or someone you've known for maybe a day. Like, there's a progression to things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what I was going to say before Brandon interrupted me again, just kidding, was that you can also use conversations like this as an indicator to kind of figure out where you stand in a relationship and what the other person believes about it, because your level of commitment might be different than somebody else's level of commitment. We've all heard stories where she wants to get married and he doesn't, or he wants to get married and she doesn't, or this person wants to have a child, this person doesn't, for different reasons, right? So if it's constantly one of those things where you feel like the intimacy of that conversation matches your commitment level, but the other person doesn't engage, I would ask them how committed they are. Or you might address, well, why am I not so committed to this? Why are we talking about marriage when I just want to date this person? That's a key indicator that you might want to cut it off, or you might want to have a conversation about where you stand on certain things. But once again, that's confrontation. And that's how you build or end relationships. Because, guys, not every relationship is meant to go on. Not every relationship is meant to be maintained. Not every relationship is going to happen. And that sucks because we look at it from the position of, okay, well, if the relationship doesn't continue on, there's something wrong with me. I'm not worth it. I failed. Sometimes it just doesn't work, man. I mean, have you ever tried putting ketchup in ice cream? Unless you're really, really weird, it just doesn't work, and a lot of times we do that, that's the term unequally yoked. That essentially says that you have two partners that are pulling different types of weight, different seasons, different beliefs, different expectations. That's why two people marrying from separate religions is often really hard, because religion is often what people base the foundation of their worldview and life on. So if this person is over here praying to, I don't know, Muhammad or something, and this person over here is praying to Jesus, it's like, how is that going to work? Because the foundation of their life is going in two separate directions. That's really hard. So just think about that. If one, confrontation seems to be not a thing, well, ask yourself why. And two, if confrontation is a thing and it just seems like somebody's not pulling their weight, well, why? Does this need to end? And sometimes cutting it off is the best thing, even though it sucks.
Mm-hmm. But that is a good reason why confrontation is loving, whether it is specifically loving yourself or loving the other person or both. If it's done in the right context, if it's done with the other person's best in mind and not just simply self-serving, and you see something of value in them and you want to help them because you love them, or you want to make sure that the relationship continues to grow beyond the point of where it's stuck, it can be a loving thing. It can be done wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of people are afraid to confront, because there are situations we go through of which we get hurt. But that doesn't mean that it in and of itself is wrong. It just, there's a right way to do it, and there's a loving way to do it. And when you find that, that's what allows the relationship to continue moving forward. And it also could very well be something that saves a person's life. Because again, you don't know what they do and do not know, and it may not have been presented to them in such a way that makes sense and clicks yet. And that is why I think sometimes you need to shake a person in confrontation.
I still disagree on that, but real quick, guys, we'll talk about that. When I was a young warthog, I love Lion King. When I was younger, probably in my early 20s, I was dating this girl. I'm not going to say who she is, but we dated for several months and it was really awesome. I thought she was attractive. We clicked. And one day she said, I think I want to take a break. And I was like, okay, well, what are you thinking? Like a month? And she's like, no, permanent. I was like, oh, and I didn't really understand it. And what she communicated to me was, she felt like Jesus told her that it was wrong. And this was before I was a Christian. Pissed me off. I was really frustrated and upset. And then after the fact, like several months later, I found out through social media that she had gotten back with her high school boyfriend and that they were engaged. And I was like, I was even more pissed, because it feels like she wasn't completely honest with me. But I don't know, because I've never engaged her with that. But the point I'm trying to make is that hurt at the time. But if we had engaged in a relationship, I know that my thoughts during the relationship were not equally yoked to her thoughts. And what I mean by that, like, I had pretty sinful thoughts. Like, I wanted to take that relationship in places that had more intimacy than the commitment. And I also didn't really follow a moral compass the way that she did, since she followed Jesus. And she identified that. And she communicated that to me in a way that I would understand, but also in a way that I couldn't comprehend, if that makes sense. Because there's a difference between understanding and comprehension. And so several years went by, and now, I discovered, okay, so this Jesus thing is real. I'm going to go in this direction. And I start seeing that for myself. I start seeing how I made decisions back then that were bad in the relationship and that were not conducive to being a healthy mate. It's just how I was. And I'm like, okay, I totally get it now. That's unequally yoked. And she cut it off because she engaged in confrontation. She knew that's what she needed to do. She knew that when it came to levels of I wanted more intimacy than commitment. She wanted more commitment than the intimacy that we had, which was totally valid. And she identified that, and me and my immature nature back then did not. And so she broke up with me. And that honestly saved a lot of heartache, and it honestly gave her the freedom to engage with somebody who is more appropriate for her life season then. And that is absolutely okay. And I'm really thankful for that, So if you're watching this and you know who you are, thank you.
And I think it's important to note that if the confrontation doesn't go the way that you expected it to, doesn't mean that it was the wrong thing to do. And does not mean that it wasn't loving. Not every confrontation you go into will the other person be as equally invested or handle it well. And that does not mean that you didn't do the right thing. If you know your heart, and you know your reasoning behind doing the confronting, and you know that there is love inside of you for that person, and you are trying to help them, that it doesn't really matter exactly how they handle it if they just flat out don't handle it well. You obviously can work on how you do confronting from that point forward, but that doesn't mean that it was necessarily the wrong thing because they didn't handle it well. And so I just want to encourage you in that, so that so that way whenever the next time comes, that you're not afraid to try again. Because you never know when it's going to go right. and when it will make the floor drop out in the relationship and you can go deeper with them, or the ceiling open up, however, which direction you think you're moving in this. So yeah, we just wanted to take some time. I wanted to talk to you guys about how I was processing through what I was going through, because like I said, it was a very confrontational, heavy week for me, and I do not think it is the end of that. Honestly, I feel like there's probably more on the way for me. Yay! And so I just want to take a second to process that with you guys. So we'll see. We'll see how that looks and how it feels and all that good stuff. But if this stream has really benefited you guys, I want to encourage you to give. We have Patreon if you want to do something monthly with us, and the link to that is below. And if you do subscribe, you will get your name added to this beautiful list that's over here. My hand is currently under it. Yes, and you will be proudly displayed with every person who is donated to us on a monthly basis. We would like to get to a place where we can eventually not only bring Tim and I on full-time financially, but also bring a whole team on so we can continue to increase the value of what we bring you. But we also have ways you can give one time. Like if you don't really want to do that monthly, we've got Venmo, we've got PayPal, and the links to that are in the description below, so that way you can give however much you feel led to do so. And there's no pressure, because one way or another, I trust that God's going to take care of us. I just know that right now He has fully called us to this. It is a complete joy, and we will continue to serve you with the best content we can possibly make. So I just want to throw that out there. And if you have not done so already, make sure to like our stream, to subscribe to us on YouTube, and to follow us on Facebook, because we will be doing more beautiful content like this. Oh, and if you're on Facebook, make sure to share it with your friends. That way we can help more people who are working through confrontation. Because this, again, this will help us, and it will help other people, and we want to get ourselves out there as much as we can to help more people and to serve them. So that said, I want to thank you guys for watching. We broadcast every week on Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be alive again this Friday with a new Get Naked, or not Get Naked, but just
Get Naked Friday.
Yeah, sure.
I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.